Hi there, and welcome to another episode of African Business Stories. Africa is the only region in the world where more women than men choose to be entrepreneurs. What this says to me is that the story of business in Africa is the story of the African businesswoman. So we're on a journey of discovery to find these women and tell their stories. On the show, we will hear from female innovators and entrepreneurs building and running businesses in Africa. They will share the highs and lows of their entrepreneurial journey and lessons learned along the way. Some of these women you may know, and many you may not, but I assure you that all their stories are inspiring in their own right. My hope is that these stories will inspire you to reach for your dreams and leave a legacy for generations to come. It makes such a big difference to us if you can rate, review, and share our episodes. You can do this mainly on Apple Podcasts, and you can find us on all podcast platforms. If you're in Africa, Spotify is now available, so check us out there. And don't forget to rate, review, and share. On today's episode, I chat with May Abdel-Essam, an Egyptian serial entrepreneur whose career in media spans almost 2 decades. She's the founder and managing director of What Women Want magazine, Media and More agency, Mindful Publications, and most recently, co-founder of HerStory films. May was born in Egypt, raised in Germany, and returned to Egypt as a teenager. She describes how a frustration with the content of magazines as a young lady led her to start What Women Want magazine. How other companies, impressed by the marketing of the publication, approached her for advertising and activation campaigns. This led to the creation of the media agency. 18 years later, her businesses continue to thrive, and she's now focused on empowering other female creatives through a new venture, HerStory Films. Let's get into it. Welcome to African Business Stories.
Thank you. Thank you. Very nice to be on board.
I wanted to start very quickly with just getting to know you a little. I know that you were born in Egypt, but you were actually raised in Germany, which is so interesting. So how did that all happen?
Well, my parents used to live in Germany. And of course, I didn't have much say in this. I was born in Egypt, but I was raised in Germany. I moved to Egypt when I was 16. So yeah, so my real socialization, my upbringing, the voice of my inner child, of my dreams, and all of that is actually in German.
Wow. So what was that experience like growing up in Germany?
Anywhere you're planted, you just grow, you know? I mean, it's not much of a choice where you grow up, where your parents are, where you live, and all of that. So it was everything I knew back then. I knew Egypt, my home country, from holidays, from the summers, basically. Kids of immigrants who grow up in the West usually know their home country from summer holidays. It's all about summer memories at the beach and lots of relatives and staying up late and getting to be spoiled by grandparents and all of that. So this was what I knew back then, you know.
Yeah, you grew up with dual languages. You were learning Arabic and German at the same time.
Yes, I grew up bilingual. It was very important for my parents that we speak our native tongue fluently, that we don't go return in summers and speak with an accent or speak like this broken Arabic. So it was very, very important for them that we're native in both languages, the country that we live in, that is our home, and at the same time the country where we come from, our roots and language and culture is very much a way to give roots to children who are raised in a country that is not theirs.
So what brought you back to Egypt at 16? You said you moved back at 16.
Yes, it wasn't my choice. I mean, as a kid, it's never your choice. It was a decision, actually. It wasn't a real family decision. It was more the decision of my mother, who was living with us in Germany, and she didn't like it. She didn't get used to the weather, to the lack of sunshine, to the language, to the whole culture. It wasn't hers. And I think she was in her early 40s when she said, I'm not going to do this anymore, and literally packed me in a suitcase and put me on a plane and said, we're going to do this differently now. So yeah, it wasn't really my decision.
So coming back, what was that like for you as a 16-year-old? You're a teenager, you're living your best life, and you have to leave your friends and go back to Egypt. What was that like
I
for
tell you,
you?
I wasn't living my best life because I was at an age where you start conflicting with the own culture and the culture you're in. I was a very rough teenager, and
Mm,
I was always a troublemaker. So it was this notion that my mom always thought back home everything is better, the grass is greener, on the other side. This
right.
was this notion. So for me, it was like a fresh start somewhere else. I was extremely lucky. I got into the German school in Cairo, and initially, suddenly, I met people who are like me, who are either coming from mixed families, they're half German, half
Mm,
Egyptian, or they're children of diplomats, so they're used to moving around, and it was very, very multicultural and international in a different way because I was more at home because we come from the countries is reflects the same culture that my mom would like me to be more native in, and suddenly
mm.
people look like you. I mean, I was the only brown kid in my class, and suddenly you have like people who look like me and who get it when I say this is fine, this is not fine. So it was actually quite a refreshing experience. I loved it. I had a great time. I connected very, very easily, and it was a very, very smooth transition. I never would have expected that. I think I was really lucky that it was, and I kind of found my place, which I had been able to in my first 16 years. I mean, how many teenagers know where they belong or find their place in such an early age? So for me, it was actually it was a good thing that happened.
That is such a great story. So how did you then decide that you wanted to study mass
I
communication?
tell you, I've always been interested in the arts and on the creative side. I've always been doing school newspapers, playing theater, and always been engaged in any form of creative expression. And I actually wanted to go back to Germany, and I applied to study drama in Berlin. But
Okay.
the spot at university, I was on a waiting list. I would have had to wait for like 6 semesters, and my mom did not want me to go, but my dad used to live in Germany. He came back later on after he retired, so he wanted me to come back to Germany, and my mom wanted me to stay in Cairo. And drama said I can come and study in like 6 semesters, literally like 2 3 years that I have to wait. And so I was looking for other things, fashion design, cinema, film, da da da. And then my mom said, there's something called mass communication, it's quite nice, take a look. So so this is actually what happened. And she said, while you're waiting, why don't you start? I was like, yeah, I mean, you can't bum around like for 6 semesters and do nothing or work at McDonald's. So I said, why not? And I enrolled. And funny enough, I was always going to go back. But then I met my now husband and we started dating at 19. So it's always a guy, you know? So literally it's
I
fate that
know.
got me back to Egypt, and it's fate that kept me in Egypt. And yeah, I think it's been always in the books. So it wasn't really, really my choice. It was something that just came up and kind of, that diverted my path into a certain direction.
That's so interesting. So you go to university and you study mass
Yes.
communication. What were job opportunities like back in those
Yeah.
days?
Let me go a step. I was never good at school. School was never interesting for me, because I used
Oh.
to actually put all of my energy in okay, these subjects I can ace, so low hanging fruit. and then these subjects I would have to invest this amount of time to get a B, but if I get a C, I can, like, this, my energy used to go into that direction, into how to harvest low hanging fruit, never reach for more, because it wasn't interesting to me. It was socially, I loved school. Academically, I hated it. It was in my eyes, one size fits all doesn't work. It was a waste of my time completely. So when I went to university and I studied actually something I really like, I aced it. I graduated with highest honors, and it was something that came so easily, and it made so much sense, and it was just, duh, it's so easy. It's a no-brainer, because it was for the first time I was studying something that I find interesting, that I completely understand, and that's just common sense to me. So the 4 years passed very, very easily, and for me, I was like, oh wow, this is great. This is basically what I want to do. This is all about communications, about marketing, about having ideas, about getting them across, about pitching an idea and convincing somebody on the other end of the line to actually buy into your idea, or to approve it, or something like that. Because when I was younger, I was like 16, I used to talk to my friend Nada back then. I was like, when I grow up, I want to work. I didn't know what an agency is, I didn't have the terminology. And I used to say, I want to get paid for my ideas. I want to have like this company where I can sell ideas and people pay me for my ideas. So that's basically something I had in my head. And I, like, fast forward to now, when I think of it, actually, I do get paid for my ideas. So, okay, check, done, great. So starting university is when I discovered that if you put your energy into something that you really, really like and love and are passionate about, it doesn't feel like work. So this is where I had this moment. I was like, okay, this is what I want to be doing.
And you were talking, and like three times you said, it wasn't my choice, it wasn't my choice, it wasn't my
Yes.
choice. So would you say that this was kind of the first time where you chose?
Yeah, I think the first time where I chose, I still believe that we don't really choose, I think that, or in hindsight, when I look at my life, or the past years, I completely believe in divine intervention. And I believe that while, of course, you do have a choice. I mean, you decide to go right or left. Of course, you do have a choice on a superficial level. But on a deeper level, I really believe that everything I chose or I didn't either was or wasn't for me. So I was always, directed through divine intervention to a place I should be. Sometimes it's mere serendipity that something pops up and you're at the right time at the right place. Other people call it destiny. Other people call it divine intervention. Whatever rocks anybody's boat. But I believe that sometimes things that are meant to be yours find you. That doesn't mean that you don't make
Right,
decisions.
right.
That doesn't mean that you don't work hard. That doesn't mean that you don't give your best. But I still believe that sometimes we think we make choices, conscious choices, and sometimes they're just not. Things just happen.
Hmm.
And if you allow them to happen, sometimes really beautiful things happen.
So just coming back to your story, so you finish university, you actually find something that you love to do, and it's no longer feels like work. So when you then have to go out and find a job.
It's also funny because I never really looked for a job. The jobs always found me. So again, yeah, because
Okay.
my first job, I used to during college, I used to intern in a marketing research firm. I used to work with them part time. I was their intern, and as soon as I finished my studies, they offered me a job, so I had a job. And then I graduated. I think I was like maybe 21, 22, something in that range, and I was working full time until I was 26. And in these 5 6 years, I had so many jobs because I was never stable in a place. I was always working very, very intensely, and then I reach a point where somebody offers me another job, and I was like, oh wow, this is like way more than I make. Maybe it's time for a change, because when you're younger, like 6 months feels like elephant years, or a year feels like elephant years. Now in my 40s, I already look. I was like, yeah, I need another year to think about it. Like crazy, crazy terms. Yeah. So I kept on getting going from one nice job to another, and my longest maybe was like 2 years or 2 years and a half, and I would always find that I'm bored. It's like something is missing, and I do the job well, I get promoted, I excel, I do this and I do that, and then suddenly I'm completely bored. I think that I was not using my whole capacity. It's like, okay, so
Hmm.
this is it. What do I do the rest of the day? And
Wow.
yeah, and this took on for a while, until I started the magazine. I was still working in a job. I had like a small disagreement with my back then manager, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna quit, and I'm gonna focus on the magazine. And this is basically what I did, because it would have I was
Wow.
into I had issued the first two issues, and I was still working, and then I quit, took an office, and yeah, and then almost 20 years passed since that day.
So, what made you start the magazine? You were already in a job. So, this is you being bored and wanting to do something extra, I'm assuming.
Yeah, some people approached me. They wanted to work on a guide for women, da da da, stuff like that. And then I kind of turned it into a magazine. I was like, yeah, why not? I used to do the school magazine, and here and there and stuff like that. And it's my study. It's what I know. It's what I like. I've always been a writer, and writing in a school magazine and stuff like that. And there's nothing really that resembles me that I can read. I mean, all of the women's magazines are like very glossy, and it's all about glitz and glam. And usually they don't represent people who look like us. They're all like, I mean, I grew up in the 90s, so size zero was something that basically, ruined my relationship with food until now. So they never really looked like me, neither in Germany, or even when I moved to Egypt. They still didn't look like me, because you have all the magazines still trying to get the blonde bleached skinny babe on the cover and stuff like that. There's always been so many mixed messages. Page 5, how to love yourself. Page 10, how to lose that mummy pooch. And then page 15, how to get a nose job. And then page 20, how to keep the guy. So many mixed messages. What is it? Should I love myself, get a nose job, or change myself for the guy? Just give me one clear message so I can understand. So I think that was a little bit
Wow.
of how it all started. And then and then things, just got a life of its own.
So, the people who approached you, were they going to fund the magazine, or how did you
No,
fund?
they actually, it was an idea. We were going to all co-fund, and we're not partners anymore. That was really literally a thing of 18 years ago. And
Right.
no, the magazine, I've never ever had an investor. All of my businesses are literally bootstrapped. I've never had an investor. Partnership is so very difficult, because I have a certain moral compass, or like an ethical standard that I've set very very high for me. And oftentimes I would always say, if I had a partner at this stage, that person would think I'm a complete nutcase, and take away the company from me. Because, for example, I don't take certain advertisers. I would not take. I mean, you have all of the beauty plastic surgery industry. They're like lining up to advertise with us, because we have high credibility among our target audience. And I would never ever take money or communicate on any of my platforms that you do need a nose job. I mean, if you want to go get one, go ahead. It's great, respect, but it's not something I'm going to sell to younger girls. So yeah, so it's always has been bootstrapped. It always has been my own money, my own risk. Yeah.
And how have you seen that grow? What's your readership like over the years? It's been
I
what,
think,
over 15
yeah,
years
the
now.
magazine is turned 18 years last March. Yes.
Mm.
So thank you,
Congratulations.
thank you. I think the first 10 years I've been just running because you have this hustling mentality. You know, you're a hustler. You have to like take care here and there, and oh my god, how I'm gonna pay rent and salaries and here and there and stuff like that. And then suddenly, after 10 years, you realize, okay, we're not a startup. So you can't continue doing business with the startup mentality. You need to realize that you're at a certain point and you need to start behaving accordingly. That was a learning process, because you have this mentality like, okay, I'm going to bring this from home, and I'm going to like bring the printer from home, and you know, this hustle mentality. And then you reach a point, no, this is a business. It has to generate income. It has to be able to scale. It has to have certain attributes. So it took a while. So the first 10 years it's like running, trying to stay afloat and to be relevant, and all of this. And then suddenly you realize, oh, okay, let's just take a break and just like take a look and reevaluate, reassess. Are we running into the right direction? Is this what you really want? And stuff like that.
And you also started another magazine in that time. I know it's been discontinued.
The travel mag. It was back then in 2010. We launched in 2010, right before 2 issues before the Egyptian revolution in 2011, Jan 2011. And it was back then the only travel magazine in town. It was doing really great. I personally loved it. I loved traveling. I loved the imagery. And for me, it was a second magazine. So all of the things that I learned, the mistakes I made with the first magazine, it was like, you know, instead of starting here, you started there. So it was like a really nice rollout. I loved it. And then the revolution happened. And then, of course, you had huge economic problems, and there was for a long time and there was no tourism and inbound, outbound, and stuff like that. So I literally printed the fourth issue out of my own pocket for nostalgic reasons, because I wanted the 2011 was such a glorious date. I wanted to have it on the cover printed and all of that, but I had to pull the plug because it was about surviving. And for me, What Women Want magazine had to be the one that survives. So I had to pull the plug on that. Right. Yeah. And back then, actually, 2010, I had founded a publishing house called Mind Food Publications. It was in Cyprus back then. And I was going to start to publish books. And there's a book of a friend of mine, a novel she had written back then, and that was supposed to be the first one. Sense of Musk is the name. But I lost so much money during the revolution and all of that. So I had to tell her, go ahead, you have to find another publisher or self-publish or whatever. I will not be able to do it because I lost money, and I have to make sure that we, you have to get rid of any excess, and you have to make sure that you stay light and agile and float through this financial crisis. So I had to shut down the publishing house and all of that. 10 years later, in 2020, I founded it again. This time it's based in Egypt, and we started publishing books. So this is what I mean, that with a divine intervention, it really happens at the right time, because I always want, I'm very fast paced, and I want so many things, and I do so many things at the same time. But this was just not, the time wasn't right. 2010 wasn't right for me in that stage to publish books. 10 years or 12 years later, it just makes more sense. It was different. Right. It was a different experience. It was a different financial standing that I had. It was a different network that I had. It was a different safety net that I have now versus in 2010, which made it easier for me to do that 10 years later. So sometimes it just takes a decade for the right time to just come.
At some point in between Mindful Publications and What Women Want magazine, you started a media agency. So talk to us a bit about that.
That was actually also almost 18 years ago. Thing is that I also studied marketing and all of that. So it's always been a thing. So I started doing different activations, marketing activations to promote the magazine. I would ask brands with like really low budget to sponsor it. And the idea was always to promote the magazine. You know, I would have like, I get an outdoor kitchen on a very known beach, the North Coast, and during August. So everybody would be there. And I would get back then a very famous celebrity TV chef to come and cook, and would ask sponsors to pay for the ingredients and and stuff like that. And the idea was always to promote the magazine. So people would come, brands would approach me and would ask me, okay, could you like work on a proposal and do activations, but that are not related to the magazine, that are related to our brands purely? I was like, yeah, why not? Does it pay? Let's do it. So this is basically how it happened. And it allowed me to be autonomous in the magazine, because Media and More, the agency, would bring in money, and at times where the magazine would not make any money, because it's very difficult for a publication that relies on advertising and things like that, way before the social media age. I mean, we're there since 2006. So you had good months and bad months, and it's not like a very profitable industry if you do it my way, you know. If you do it the other way and becomes this glitz and glam, and we say anything just to sell more ads, then of course it's profitable. So Media and More gave me, fulfilled the need that I had for people to pay me money for my ideas. So initially that was a good thing. And it was a source of income that's commercial, that makes sense.
Yeah, I've seen some of your clients. You have some incredible clients. I saw AstraZeneca on the list, you know, Johnson and Johnson, Vodafone. That business ran off and has been very successful.
Thank God, I can't complain. I mean, back again, if I go back to 2009, we started going into tech and doing websites and all of that, which was back then a needed thing in the Egyptian market. And 2010, we started offering our clients social media management. It was weird back then to go to a company and tell them, you pay us money and we manage your Facebook. The IT does that, you know. There's like, you had like this, the IT person post like weird cats and dog pictures and stuff like that for a company. So in 2010, we had our first social media client. And then the revolution happened, and the social media boom happened. And then it was very relevant what we're doing. So I think 2010 to 2016 was our peak. We had loads of FMCG clients. We used to do most of the work for Nestle and all of its brand, Nescafe and stuff like that. Was the peak. It was really a peak that we had. We started a production house producing digital content online. We would have the Germans come here and do and stay for a few months with us and produce all of their global assets and stuff like that. So it was a really, really good time. And it was also a peak for the agency. And it was a very bad time for me, because I was completely burnt out of doing so many things at the same time. And it's a very dynamic industry. You're online all the time. You get a complaint Saturday morning, Friday morning and stuff. You're alert all the time. And back then, 2014, 2015, I was already burning out, and I burnt out so many younger people who work in the creative industry along with me. And then I was like, no, this is not how I want to live. And this is not the lifestyle I signed up for. This is not what I want for myself. And this is not what I want for my team. It was a long process. Back then, I started to like feng shui my life and see, okay, which client is draining us, which client is not making the money we should be doing. We started to put boundaries. Okay, we're not doing this on the weekend. If we're going to do this on the weekend, it's an extra charge. We would hire somebody else to do it, stuff like that. And it was a long process to actually move from, back then, I wanted to be like the biggest social media agency in Egypt and here and there. That was, you know, like crazy stuff. You always think you want to be the biggest, the best and all of this. And then you realize there's a hefty price tag. And if it costs my kidney, I don't want it. And if it costs my mental health, I don't want it, because at the end of the day, I mean, it's just advertising, you know. It's not like I'm saving Palestine or I'm creating a cure for cancer. It's something very, very shallow, and it's something we do for fun. And it's so I started to change it. Now my team, we never had 9 to 5 hours. I mean, you had 9 to 5, and then you leave whenever the job is done. And then
Right.
no, I want to I want to take my kids to practice, I want to still do homework, I want to be there for bedtime, da da da. And then it took a while, but then it was a decision taken. We started to actually only work with clients who we extremely respect, we love their products, who we get along with, who have some sort of a purpose. We do a lot for UN Women, we do a lot for USAID, we do a lot for the National Council for Women, and stuff like that. So suddenly it just came into our direction that we have this certain expertise when it comes to women and family and creating content and stuff like that. And then we started attracting the people or the clients we really want to work with. So this is what I'm saying, because sometimes you make a choice and you're not really aware of the beautiful things you're going to be attracting when you put certain boundaries. So it was also a process that I started doing right at the peak, because we were at the peak and things look good, but you're not really happy and to enjoy it, because you're so exhausted and giving
Yeah.
palpitations, and no, this is not what I want to do.
That is so interesting, because a lot of times you're right, we're chasing success, but at the expense of our soul.
Exactly.
And sometimes, it's important to stop and take stock
Yeah.
of what's really important. And I think a lot of things have happened in life recently that make us think about what is important and how we balance this desire to succeed and, and what does success look like from family to work.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so that's very interesting. So you make that balance, you set your boundaries, you attract the clients that you actually want to work with. But then May doesn't stop.
Yes.
She goes on and starts more businesses.
Yes, yeah, yeah. It's trauma response. I'm sure it's trauma response. All of this is trauma response. So, yeah,
You now take the zero focus on women and giving back and empowering other women. And we come to mindful publication, where you pick up this publication business again and focus
yeah.
on women and publishing books. I don't know that I know any other company that does that. Maybe there are, but at least not on the continent. So what made you pick that up again and just focus exclusively on women writers?
I think it's always like this really nice puzzle piece. Okay. And then when I wanted to put this puzzle piece in my puzzle 10 years ago, it wasn't the right time. It wasn't the right fit, And back then, the idea wasn't about women and all of that. It was just, oh my God, this is really great. I want to do it. I love this book. And my friend wrote it and stuff like that. And then when it happened at the right time, I was at a place in life and in my experience and in my journey where I said this makes more sense, because this is something that I've been doing my whole life, even consciously or subconsciously. And I really feel that this is what I want to be doing. If I can give my platforms or my access or my network to other women to create art or to get their message across, then this is a win for everyone. So I said, okay, this makes sense. And out of this came the idea of HerStory films. HerStory films is the latest baby, and it's a film production company that is exclusively doing capacity building for female filmmakers and producing female filmmakers. We currently have developed 20. We had a competition, and we for a film incubator. Over 140 female directors applied.
Wow.
20 were selected by a selection committee. Their short films were developed in an incubator, and actually we're announcing the final 6 projects today or tomorrow. And
Wow.
next week we will be choosing 3 short films from these 6, and they will be produced after the summer. And for me, it was like a natural evolution of what I'm doing, because I'm a storyteller. I always see myself. I've been a storyteller all my life in different different forms of different platforms, different media, and all of that. And I always saw myself as a bridge, as somebody who builds bridges, because my connection between the East and the West, the Germany and the Western culture and our Arab Oriental culture. So I've always seen myself as like an ambassador of a sort. So it kind of came naturally that the story is in writing, and then it's in a book, and then it's in visual media, and so on and so forth. So it was just a natural extension. The twist here is that for the first time in many, many years, I do have a partner. And actually, it's quite a crazy story. I was having a massage. I always say it's a meditation. It sounds so much cooler, but actually, it was a massage, and I was in a meditative state. And I was like, "Oh my God, why don't you call this and this and this?" And there were like four A-list actors. It's like you have it's like you have a meditation, and then you would say you say, okay, Julia Roberts and Reese Witherspoon and like Nicole Kidman. This was my dream, but in the Arab world. And I was like, yeah, why don't we do it? And we call it HerStory Films. And then literally I called up Munazaki. Munazaki is maybe the equivalent of Nicole Kidman to the West,
wow.
to the Arab world. And I told her about my idea, and she was like, yeah, right, sounds amazing, I'm in. I was like, wow, that was real. Oh my
Just
God.
like that.
Just like that. I was like, okay, wow, I would have never, like manifested this in my wildest dreams. But it happened, and here we are. And yeah, so it's like the way I evolved. It's the way the businesses and the work and what I'm doing evolved, and so many things. When I like sat with myself, do I want to die doing this, or do I want to die doing that? So I got rid of many, many things that don't serve me anymore and that I don't want on my journey. And I said, thank you, you're amazing, but you're not coming with. So it's always about you because the thing about choices, I mean, you have to make these choices, but in the end, I believe that there's a path. And I always had this feeling as a child that God has something really, really big for me, and I just have to reach it. So this was like a thread throughout all of my life. I've yeah, since I was a little child. It's weird and it sounds crazy. It's the first time I say it out loud, not in front of the mirror. But I always had this feeling. And whenever something like that happens, I was like, oh, wow, this is it. What's next? I have this childish excitement about, okay, so yeah, let's do it.
A couple of questions, May. So why this time did you decide to have a co-founder? Because I saw that when I was reading up HerStory Films, and why now?
I think that in the past 20 years, I've worked so much on myself and I learned so much about myself. So it's much, much easier to have a partner or to enter any form of relationship when you're older, because you enter it with a different mindset. You're a different person. It's like getting married at 20 or at 40. Would your choices at 20 be the same at 30 or at 40? Or it's like buying a car. Is it the same car that you buy at 20, at 30, at 40? You get what I mean? You're a completely different person. So you're not the same person you were. Maybe you're not the same person that would have certain insecurities. So you would not be able to talk it out or to hash it out with a business partner, and maybe now you can. It's like a different situation.
Is it the government of Netherlands that is, or is it an agency in Netherlands that is partnering with you on this?
Film Incubator is proudly and funded by the Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Okay. They signed 3 years with HerStory Films, and we're doing in the 2 incubator editions in those 3 years, with the outcome of 6 short films that are
that's fantastic.
Pressing gender issues that hopefully are written and directed by Egyptian filmmakers, and that hopefully will go to different festivals and allow us to tell our stories. So we own the narrative and we tell our own stories instead of having stories told about us. That's also a very, very important point and thread throughout my life.
Yeah. Apart from the work that you do, Still with a focus on women, did you create a support network for women in Egypt? I was reading.
It's quite a funny story because this network, it's a network of female entrepreneurs, and it's called هنفرح بيكي امتى. It translates into when are you going to make us happy, and it's always used in the context of getting married. You know, if somebody would be told this, like a certain, like all of the older aunts on a wedding, they would like ask this question if you're not married. So when the magazine turned like 10 years, we used it as our campaign tagline. And we would have like this, like in cartoons, this question being asked in a speech bubble, and we have this posh pinup girl would reply and say, "I'm already happy. I'm the youngest manager in my family. I'm already happy. I already opened a branch of my company in Dubai," and stuff like that. So we turned something really annoying into fun content, and then it turned into a video where like we gathered 26 entrepreneurs to give some advice to other women on how to do it, and then it turned into a conference, and then it turned into a network where we have like over 120 business women entrepreneurs supporting each other. We have like a group, and somebody would post, "I'm looking for an HR executive." 10 would like post stuff like that, you know. So this is kind of the business sisterhood that we have. Yeah.
Wow, that is amazing. Thank you for sharing that. So, in the spirit of reflecting as we round up, I normally ask my guests two things at the end, a reflection and some advice. We like advice here. Just in reflecting on all these amazing businesses and things that you've built over the last 18 years, what would you say has been some of the most impactful things that I know that you're still achieving. I get that sense that we're still building, we're still going, but just looking back, what are some things that you're very proud of that you feel this has been impactful and grateful that I was able to do that?
I think that the fact that we survived this very tough industry for so many years without really compromising myself, without compromising things I believe in, this is something I'm very, very proud of. I'm proud of the fact that I learned to prioritize what's really important in life. So this is something I'm proud of. It's not about, because I don't really measure success in terms of money or being around and stuff like that. It's for me about the impact I would have on my surrounding. For me, if it's sometimes really funny because a few years back I was interviewing someone and for a job, and she was a fresh graduate, and she was like, "I grew up reading your magazine." So I was like,
Wow.
"Oh wow, I'm kind of offended because that makes me really old because you're like really old." And I was like, "Oh wow, this is something, wow." I was like, wow. And then I said, I'm so happy because I do believe that we have this kind of responsibility, because when I used to read magazines, I used to feel really bad about myself. I would feel less than because I'm not skinny enough, I'm not whatever, blonde enough, I'm not anything enough of all of these girls that make it to glossy magazines or are in the limelight. So all of the media I consumed when I was younger, it was really toxic for me, and it made me feel less than. It never empowered me. It never gave me like a really nice female role model to look up to and to say, "Oh my God, I can be her." So when fast forward so many years later, a young girl says that she grew up with it and she felt the opposite, that was like, "Oh my God, I can literally die now." You know, this was this kind of that made my year.
That's amazing. So, in terms of advice, what advice would you give other women who are building businesses across the continent?
Usually I think the literally the best formula is look for something that you love, do it passionately and vigorously, and hope that it loves you back, and then give it your all. And then when you see it loves you back, then it's great. If it doesn't love you back, kick it out, because not everything is meant to be for everyone at any given time. And don't take yourself too seriously. Life is too short. You can still do it tomorrow. I always thought, no, I have to do it. I have to do it today. No, you don't have to do it. You can still do it tomorrow. Tomorrow is another day. It's okay. The world is not going to end if you don't submit it on time. The world is not going to end if this pitch is not perfect enough. This is actually a note to self. It's more a note to myself rather than advice, because I'm the last person to give advice. But these are the things that I think are important that I would like to share. And don't take yourself too seriously. I mean, it's just, we're literally just, it's so insignificant. Whatever we do is so insignificant at the end of the day. And it's not really what matters. And what we do is not who we are. This is something I really had to learn, because whenever I do something and it's rejected or it faces negative criticism or anything, because art is so subjective and work is so subjective, it's not me being rejected. It's just something that I did. And it's what I do. It's not who I am. This is very, very important. And it was something I had to learn the hard way. And yeah, always evaluate if you're running into the right direction. It's not always the right direction. And have fun.
Have fun.
Yeah,
Have fun.
If it's not fun anymore, then no.
There's no point.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, May. This has been a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for listening. If you're not already subscribed, please do so on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And don't forget to leave us a review so we know how we're doing. I'm Akego Okoye, and you have been listening to African Business Stories.